Yo, linked up, and we are back with another podcast. Gummy, how are you today?
Amazing. How is everyone?
I'm doing great.
I'm doing fantastic. I just got back from Dubai, guys. So I'm a little bit jet lagged.
Wow.
Yes. Jet setter over here.
Well, we spoke. There was a big B2B conference there, and I spoke with John Lee and Paul Getter. Do you know Paul?
Wow.
He created like Ty Lopez.
Wait, what? Really?
Grant Cardone
Cool.
and stuff. Yeah.
Damn, holy crap. If you guys don't know who... Oh, shoot.
Deal making.
If you guys don't know who Adhrucia is, she's a filmmaker, artist, and your production company is freaking...
Curiosity.
Yeah, Curiosity Entertainment.
And she's being humble right now. She's working on about 8 shows and working with the people from Ozark. And right, two movies, right?
We have 5 TV shows and 2 movies right now, and the first one is going to be announced any day now, and it is the next show from the creator of Ozark, Mark Williams. Stephen Hopkins is directing, who did Californication and Shameless, and we got a big star who's coming over that will be announced in this next week. 2 big stars, actually. So that will start in January and then go into production. I was just nominated for an Emmy for a film I executive produced with my old partners at Braun almost 3 years ago because of the pandemic. That's on HBO Max. It's called The Survivor. It's Barry Levinson's last movie. Ben Foster's in it. And then we have TV shows with the writers of Umbrella Academy, the writer of Law & Order SVU, who's now in Raising Kanan. These are all showrunners for those of you in film and television. Showrunner of Fear of the Walking Dead. That's a co-production with Alcon Entertainment.
Jeez.
How do you remember all of this?
Yeah, how are you doing this?
And Rob Weiss, who did Ballers and Entourage and How to Make It in America. And then we have a film with Anthony McCartan, who did Theory of Everything, Darkest Hour, and Bohemian Rhapsody, and one with Simon West right now, who did all the Tomb Raiders.
Wow. So incredible.
We develop, we produce them, and then we also have a sister finance company that finances the ones that it's appropriate for, but we work with the streamers, studios, all of the above. So I just tell stories all day, guys. I create and tell stories.
That's powerful. And, you know, as a woman of color, it's so inspiring to see a woman that is killing it in the film industry.
Yeah, you're killing it.
How did you even,
you.
get there? Like, how did that even happen?
Yeah, my story that Chris knows a little bit about is a bit of a walkabout. I grew up singing, acting, dancing on stage, and I wanted to be a storyteller. I broke my knee when I was 15. And so my journey is really a story about overcoming fear, consistent perseverance, and then following your passion. And I broke my knee when I was 15 and was told I wouldn't walk again without limping. And I was an actor, singer, dancer. So I would plan to go to conservatory for musical theater. And I had to kind of decide after that year what I wanted to do with my life, because my parents did not feel like it was a smart decision to go into just this. They've always been absolutely supportive. So it wasn't that they didn't want me to go into film and television. They just said, hey, let's look at what could be a backup in case your knee continues to bother you. And really, I grew up in the Midwest, and I'm a woman of color. And when I was growing up during that time, people really typecast everything. So I would always get the understudy. And
Where did you grow up?
In Ohio.
Wow.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. And it's funny because when you're a kid, you don't understand the way the world looks at you.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that I was second best. I didn't think that I had the ability, without like what had happened with my knee, et cetera, to go into it still as a career, because I was like, oh man, I always get like the understudy or the dance backup or the dance leader or these things. But if I look back now, like our plays were fully typecast. I didn't have a chance as long as we were doing Fiddler on the Roof, and we never did Aladdin. So anyway, I ended up Russian rouletting. I went to film school right out of high school in New Zealand. I studied photojournalism and film. And then I went to college for business because I Russian rouletted my college applications, meaning I didn't know what I wanted, so I just applied to all kinds of things. And I ended up getting the most money to go to business school. And it was a program that was 25 kids, full scholarship. They were going to send us around the world. Procter & Gamble was paying for it. My dad said, go for a year. And if you hate it, I'll pay for you to go somewhere else. So, that knee break really changed my life, and it also taught me to believe in the impossible. These guys had told me I wouldn't be able to walk again without
Exactly.
without limping. And, you know, I was a really soft kid before that break, retrospectively. And I really had to overcome, we did about 6 to 8 hours of therapy a day, and I had to overcome a lot of pain. And I just had this mindset of like, no, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back. I'm going to dance. And I think when someone gives you one of these, like, these kind of overarching statement, like you will never do this again, or you can't, and you overcome it, you start breaking down those walls that like society brings.
Exactly. When
Powerful.
Yes, 100%. So like even growing up, for me, like I got diagnosed with ADHD, and you know the doctor said, you know, you're not going to be able to not take this medicine to be okay. Wow. And you're not going to, if you don't take this, you're not going to be able to concentrate, and you're going to, you know, you're not going to be able to, you know, learn the way, you know, you're supposed to in school, because the medicine, it calms you down, it puts you in a box. Like I took this for 7 years, and in middle school, I was the quiet kid in class. I would just put my head on the desk, and I would be scared when the teacher was like, "Yo, does anyone have like any questions, or like pick like a reader to pick and stuff?"
That's
and
crazy. I would have never imagined you being quiet.
Yeah, me, I'm like so outgoing now.
You are.
And so one day, I just hated listening to the doctor, hated listening to my parents, and because my sisters had it too, and then they were older, so they were still taking it. So it was like, you know, you are what you learn around. Like, you know, if you grow up around a certain way, everyone has their beliefs, and especially within, you know, medicine, everyone has their beliefs in what medicine, you know, could do, because a doctor is saying this will help you, and so everyone believes it. And but for me, I was like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I feel trapped in a box, and I feel like I can't be myself and actually grow. So back to what you were saying.
Ironically, that was my second large obstacle that I had to overcome, was in and around this a misdiagnosis of ADHD. So I went to work at Saatchi & Saatchi, first as an intern. They're a big advertising firm. Then then I worked full time there as a co-op right out of while I was still in college starting. And my idea had been, because when you're 18 and you're just like trying to figure stuff out, it was like, okay, this is storytelling for brands, and my business degree will back it, and that's like the closest I'll get, but at least I'll still be being creative. And I went to New York, and what I learned when I was at Saatchi, which was a lesson that stayed with me and has helped me get to where I am in film and television, is that I was sitting there and I was throwing up these great ideas about Yoplait yogurt and General Mills, like, to my boss at that time to pitch, and the brand side would come in, and they were the money, and they would say, oh, those are really great ideas, and by the way, this is what we're going to do, now go back and recreate it for us. So I was getting paid a third of the amount, and I was on the creative side doing what I thought I would love.
So you didn't have full creative control.
You didn't even have a voice.
I didn't have creative control. And so it was an important lesson in terms of my film and television journey, because I realized that during that position, that the creative control was always on the money side in creative industries, and that the money and the creative really never spoke the same language. So I came back out to LA. I basically finished all my credit hours early. I declined the job in New York, went to LA, came to LA. And I was working in a management consulting position for a company, but then on the weekends I was going and I was working in an agency, because I was like, I had been recruited when I was in New York. I'd still acted and sang all the way through college, and I'd been recruited by a management firm to come out to LA. We're going to make you the Indian Eva Longoria. And like, I need to understand how things work. So when I got here, like, this was great. I was going to these meetings, but I was like, I don't understand how this casting thing works. So I went and I volunteered to work at an agency on the weekends, and then I figured out how the casting system worked, and I started like casting myself, acting like I made a fake email, acted like my own manager, started casting myself.
That's
got an entourage, and like started getting bigger and bigger like bit parts I was actually getting paid for. And then one day I shared this with Chris earlier, like with your ADD, I had these days where I had been such a highly functioning adult in college. I was homecoming queen, I was student body this, I was on every single council, and I had days in LA once I moved out here, I couldn't get out of bed. And I thought that it was depression. It just was so unlike my personality. I'm like, well, I did move across the country again, so maybe it's depression. And I'd had to finish a dissertation paper to walk in college graduation. Even though I'd graduated early, I had one thing I had to finish and like turn in before going back a year later and walking with everyone. And so I had never taken like a drug or an aid all through college. Never took an Adderall, nothing. I like had done everything on my own. I was graduating cum laude at that time. But I couldn't get my shit together, so I borrowed an Adderall from someone for the first time in my life. And I took it and I thought that I was fixed. And
how did you feel when you took the first Adderall?
I think like anyone who's ever taken Adderall, or for that matter, like it makes you feel unstoppable in that first moment. It doesn't matter whether you're without diagnosis or with, like, if you took it as anybody, it is an amphetamine compound. It makes you feel like you're on speed. You all of a sudden feel
for me it's totally different.
Is it?
Yeah, so it slows me down because it's so weird, because I heard a lot of people, they take Adderall to go like really fast and like get a lot of work done, but for me it's literally like it's a trap. Like I will be so antisocial and will not want to do anything.
No, it did that too though. It's like both sides. So what it did was it allowed me to hyper focus on certain things, but it killed my creativity and my ability 100%. To be social.
Oh my God,
and my social anxiety went through the roof. There were days where I couldn't. So anyway, I come back, I get properly diagnosed by a doctor in Ohio in terms of what their definition of proper diagnosis is. I'm given the Adderall. I'm told to come. I actually went to a comprehensive center because I'm holistic. Like I don't take any drugs at all. So I wanted to make sure I was getting the proper diagnosis. And they were like, oh, there's this weird thing with working memory, but you definitely have ADD. Go back out to LA and call us every month. We'll adjust your dosage. Every month I called, they would adjust my dosage. It was getting higher and higher and higher.
Wow.
I was having I would have days where I couldn't get off the couch. My social anxiety was through the roof. My mom was like, your personality's changing. Wow. I was like so adamant about certain things. So I had both, Chris. Like certain parts of my life slowed down. And when I was needing to do like a legal doc, I was able, but every time I would go to get my dose re-upped, it was because I would crash again. I was like sleeping on 30 milligrams of Adderall twice a day. And I'm like, this is not working for me. I got to go figure out something that's holistic. And so I ended up I met someone in LA and they referred me to a place called the Drake Institute here in Los Angeles. And I thought I was going to be taken off the Adderall because they helped kids who had ADD control. They described to me, because I'm not a doctor, that ADD is an abnormality in your central cortex, and essentially some people have more of it, some people have less. We don't really know what it's for. It's kind of like your appendix. But they would use brain training to help people control that brainwave. And so when they diagnose people, and it's usually kids, they do a full brain map. So they put sensors all over your brain, do a map of your brain. And so when they did the map of my brain, they found out that I actually had minute amounts of ADD like the rest of the country, and I had something called an auditory processing disorder, APD, which is a learning disability. And I'd had it since I was a kid. And the schools had just
and this entire time,
but you also was like magna cum laude, right?
I graduated magna cum laude. I had no idea. So I had this dialogue, like I learned from hands-on learning, like I learned from the arts, I learned from music. This was like my dialogue that we had come up with over the years. Retrospectively, what auditory processing disorder is when they put headphones on me and they slow down the sounds. I actually was missing consonants, but the way they described it to me is like I test in the upper 3 percentile for my ethnicity, my age, my gender, and IQ. And so I was able to just trick people, create compensation mechanisms. Really? If I was hyper focused, I was able to not let the deficiency like hit me. So I had created environments where I was always high stress. And what had happened when I moved to LA from New York to LA is I had been in a new environment and there hadn't been as much structure. So without the structure, I wasn't able to create these like high stress moments and kind of all the balls had fallen down. But if you look back at my history, and my mom and I, we flew my mom in, and they were like, was she bad at phonetics when you guys moved? Yeah, but we moved from Seattle to Cincinnati at that time. So I tested so high and everything. They were like, oh, you're fine. You'll catch up with phonetics. And then when I'd gone to middle school, you know, my grades had dropped, but they were like, oh, it's hormones, it'll be fine. And she got me tutors, and I worked through it. And then when I got to high school, I broke my knee. So they were like, oh, she's bad at language, but it's because she missed the first year of high school. And and when I got to college, I just was so over involved in everything. Yeah. And I was like, I can't learn from lectures. I learn from hands-on learning. So I created this excuse. Yeah. And one of the things your brain does when you have a deficiency is your body tries to compensate it by creating control mechanisms in other ways. So when I was a kid, like I couldn't go at night without showering. They gave me this diagnosis, and they were like, you have to take a year off from work, and you need to come in here 8 hours a day. We have to do at least 4 hours, because your brain's a muscle, right? So for them to change, as you grow older, your neuroplasticity becomes less that's why kids can learn things so quickly. Yeah. So they were like, you're an adult, we don't know how this treatment's going to work with you, so we need you to be serious about it. We need to come in. It's going to be 8 hours a day. We're going to do 4 hours of basically bio and neurofeedback. Wow. To unlearn the triggers that you've learned to keep stressed, B, to retrain that muscle in your brain. So they put a sensor on that brain. I would literally control a computer screen with my thoughts alone until that muscle picked up. And then they were like, and then you have to go to therapy because they're changing the chemistry of your brain. You need to re-understand. It was such a blessing because I had been on this rocket ship. And in the rocket ship, 25 kids, full scholarships, very competitive, like mind frame. I had been winning and I had been ahead and I was going. So yeah, I was like going and trying out things that were still around my passions. But like I was married to this idea of what success was. Like by this age, I got to have this. By this age, everyone who I graduated with was now like managing we're managing different brands. We're going up the corporate ladder. We're owning their own companies. And I had been ahead of all of them. And now you're telling me I have to take a year off of my life and just focus on my health. And so what I like to describe happened during that time was just like, I literally had a bit of a mental break with what I had constructed as reality. Yeah. Because if I were to continue to measure my success on the old measures of success I had defined success by, I would have been depressed and I would have not been able to continue to move on. And so I like to say, like, I just stopped aging that year. Like, it just literally, I let go of all the ideas around, like, what is success? What is, like, this timeline? What is these factors? And that created space for me to actually rethink what is my passion and what do I want to do. The beautiful thing is when you have a stop in life like that and you have to start over because you take a break in your career, or you take a break. Now I have a new foundation. My brain's completely different, right? Is that you only have to start over once to lose your fear of starting over. And so here's
re-say that right now. That was good. That was really good.
and it's true, right? And so here I had to stop. I had to jump off the rat race, off the hamster wheel, right? Yeah. That everyone else was on. And I had to really figure out what I wanted. And, you know, Chris, you and I talked outside of this about like the loneliness around that process, because part of that was that as I was processing it, in order to kind of quantum leap into this new reality or to understand this new reality, the peer group around me that I'd had for so long, like they were married to this old reality. And so I'm not like proud.
Explain that a little bit. Old reality.
Yeah, the peer group that was around me, they based their success on when they got married and when they had kids and what their title was and what their resume said and like progress. And now I wanted to, and I was sitting here for this year, I wanted to take a departure. I needed to refigure out everything. And I didn't have the answer then, but I needed to refigure out like what I wanted to do with my life. I needed to refigure out like what this new tool was that I had. And so to bring them along was going to be painful because they would ask me the same questions and I was trying to recalibrate my life. So I needed almost my entire environment to change.
But for you to accept that you need to restart is powerful, because a lot of people would just say, you know what, I'm good. I'm just gonna go back to a normal life and be like everybody else.
Yeah.
And that was an option for you, you know.
For sure, but I think again, like, we're all so busy, running.
Every single day, everyone is always running, trying to get to the next level. You know, everyone is around other people that are maybe more successful in their eyes to them. And like, for me and everyone, I would say here, we're around like a whole bunch of people that are very competitive, especially in Web3. You know, it just moves and moves.
Super
but
fast.
I would say the good thing about Web3 is everyone's trying to build together, and there is that like teamwork. But I feel like in Web2, it's like kind of a little bit different in like the real business world, because it's like,
very hierarchical.
And you can explain a little bit more on like all of that, because you are in the real business world and you've been in it for a while.
Been in it. Actually, I worked in the hospital like right out of college, and hospital institution is very much traditional, and like having a very toxic work environment. You know, everyone is measuring, and I also studied global medicine at USC.
Wow.
And so I definitely relate to your story so much, because when you're in a very competitive environment in school, in college, and in a very competitive study, you're constantly measuring like your worth with a number or a title, and I relate to that so much. And so when I was, you know, out of college, I actually got a really great job and a really great title, and I was dating like the most like eligible bachelor at the time, like in my community, and so I thought I had it all. And I was like 21, and I thought like I was like on top of my game, but soon like everything came crashing down, and relearning that was such a challenge, because everyone around you at the time measures you according to your successes, what society deems as success. But when you're defining your own success, that's when the power shifts. Now you don't have to, you know, live up to someone else's success or definition of success. Now you can make your own definition of what success means, which is super powerful. And also it looks like it's like you created a whole new space for discovering the new you. And that's super empowering and very inspiring.
And I'm not, you know, I'm not perfect at it now, but I think when I was younger, like I didn't realize what I was doing. Like I didn't understand these concepts around like shifting into a new paradigm. And so I would kind of like shed everyone around me.
Let's talk about that real quick. Let's talk about that. So shifting into a new paradigm, can you explain that a little bit? Like, I think everyone knows what the matrix and the paradigm is, all that stuff. But for everyone that's listening in right now, you know, not everyone wants to, you know, live a normal life, you know. And a normal life, I'm saying maybe, you know, just live comfortably and, you know, live with what society gives you. And we have these people that we're all in a box, you know, at first. And you have these people that they, you know, become aware, and they're like, they start educating themselves and start asking questions. And when you start asking questions, you become more aware of the world and what really goes on in the depths of the world, and what goes on within the government, what goes on in the society. And you start to get out of this shell, and you go outside into this new world, and you have this paradigm right here, and that's what everyone says, and you got to break out of the box. So I definitely want to know, like, when you broke out of the paradigm, basically, quote unquote, how'd you feel?
I mean, so I've done it a couple of times since then. And I think the first time it was really uncomfortable, because again, I didn't know what I was doing. I think, you know, what is important and the lesson to take away from this, and Chris, the first time you and I sat down, I was coming off of a Joe Dispenza retreat where I had spent 40 hours meditating, like solid. The longest one was 4-hour meditation, just learning about these ideas of like how we need to sit in silence with ourselves.
Wow, I can't even do 5 minutes
I can't.
of silence.
That's like so. It's like that's like. I love how you said. Like I love how you said that, because like we're always going.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to like have some like you time and figure out what is your thoughts thinking? What do you want in life? What is your purpose? And I think
we are major creators, and in order to create, you have to every thought that you are putting out into the world is part of your creation, whether negative or positive. And we need the time to rewire ourselves and be like, no, this is the path I choose for me, because it is a choice.
It is a choice.
Just because your opportunity, your position, what your life looks like right now is X, does not mean you have to live X.
That's 100% true.
It's
like
a
I say,
and
exactly.
And to answer your question about paradigm, it's energy, it's a vibration. Like at the end of the day, when we're talking about shifting into paradigm, shifting into quantum leaping, all these things, it's about shifting into a new energy, because you control your energy. You are stuck in a dialogue of your own mind, of your own environment. You are creating it every day. You can decide to wake up tomorrow and be happy. You can decide to wake up tomorrow and be prosperous. And yes, that it's really hard when you maybe don't have opportunity, you don't have, and it's hard to see outside the box, but that's a part of being stuck in your old story or your dialogue.
And that's what I say this to some people sometimes, and I'm like, it doesn't matter like how you grew up, it doesn't matter who supported you growing up, it doesn't matter about, you know, what you were taught. It matters about your vision and where you personally want to go in life. And if the odds are against you, the odds are against you. You got to look right when everyone's looking left, because if you really want to change the world, if that's your purpose and you want to make an impact, you're going to look right every single time and follow your gut and your energy, because if you're not trying to be like everyone else, you have to make those sacrifices.
And listen, I'm not like some superhero. I was given circumstances where I had to figure it out. The other choice was to be depressed and fold over. And within these circumstances was given the gift of now understanding that my circumstances are not something, and it's still only, by the way, this took years after that to continue to learn and lean into. It wasn't like overnight I learned a lesson, but by being forced to go through a rebirth of like what my existence was, I was forced to understand that, okay, I don't have to measure my success, because the choice was either measure my success by these old measures or be depressed. And so I had to get rid of all of them. And that was kind of the gift and the second unfolding of or unpacking of fear, because what is all of that really? That's fear of the unknown. So I had perseverance from hurting my knee and like learning how to walk again and doing all these things, and I knew I could face anything, but I still had fear around what success looked like, right? And I think we all have that if we grew up, especially in America, but globally, if we grew up in a certain way, you know, we have this ideas and fear around like what is success, and what is monetary success, and what is financial success, and does my passion align with that, and can I be successful off of my passions alone? So this was the second opportunity I really had in my life to like unpack it. And to finish answering the question about how I became a filmmaker, I went back to Ohio, and I started working strategy work again. I even did strategy work for a bar, restaurant, nightclub, because a friend of mine said I could have ownership in it, which never worked out, but you know.
In the nightclub.
I just wanted to own something at that point, because I still had this piece of me that was stuck with this old paradigm of like, I'm behind. So I had this passion for storytelling, and it just wasn't going away. And so I ended up creating a cooking show for the restaurant. Like I was doing it to help put butts in the seat at the restaurant group. I was like, I'm going to make my name for myself in Ohio as like someone to go to for restaurants, and more people come to our restaurant, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I created this cooking show, and it was the beginning of YouTube, and I hosted it, and I helped edit it, not edit it. I helped, I wrote the whole thing, I hosted it, and I produced it. And then I ended up working on a documentary film, helping a friend of mine who was doing a documentary film about Babe Ruth. And then Fox local saw the work I was doing, and they're like, oh, you're a producer? I was like, yeah. And they were like, why don't you come in and read for our entertainment segments? And I went in, and I remember the first day they put the earpiece in my head, and I went live on Fountain Square with a band behind me. I couldn't hear anything. And I just started speaking, and I was like, oh man, I hope I did that right. right? And, you know, he came back, he's like, yeah, you can have the job for the summer. Their radio spots, all their spots for Glee, etc. So now I was producing, and a guy came through Cincinnati. He was like, what do you want to be doing? You're doing like this brand work, you're doing this producing. I knew he could give me a job, so I gave him a safe answer. And it's like, I want to be the ideas person. And he said, I don't know what the fuck that means. Whenever you're ready, come out to LA and I'll give you a job, because I can use someone who understands brand and understands content. He was doing all the marketing campaigns for The Grudge and the Bible series, which are Mark Burnett's productions, as well as for Chick-fil-A and Walmart. So that's how I came back out to LA. But when I came back out to LA, I had this bee in my bonnet, Chris, to your point of like, I'm going to be a producer. Like, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to be, and I want to be a development producer specifically. I want to be the person in charge of the story. And so I went to 2 companies. As that company started to wind down, they were moving back to their Denver, and I ended up leaving them. I went to 2 companies I knew well enough to ask for a job. I had a network out here from living here once before, but like to ask for a job is another thing. Yeah. And the first company is a very indie film label, and they basically said like, bring us all the contacts you have, like money and scripts, and we'll see what we can work out, but we can't pay you. And the second was a friend of mine who worked for Michael Bay, and he was like, oh, hon, you should have started 10 years ago in a mailroom. You can't just become a development producer.
He said that? He said that.
I mean, he was a little drunk. It was a party. He's like, swears he doesn't remember saying this, but like, he's trying to impress me, whatever that is. That was his role. So he didn't want to like make it easy.
So you worked, you were going through these like transitions, like left and right, like it was crazy, right? And so like, what was the first like big thing that you worked on that was like, damn, I just proved that guy wrong?
After my financial hardship, which we're about to get to. So I basically, in that moment when this guy said this to me, I thought to myself, you have to find a niche that you can scale in, because of what I'd learned through business. Like, you need to find where people are needed. Otherwise, you're going to get this story from everybody. But what value you bring, whatever room you walk into, guys, you have to bring value to the table. Mm-hmm. So here's an ecosystem I'm not really a part of. I've produced a little bit. How could I add value to this ecosystem? And I went back to this lesson I learned at Saatchi, that the money was always in charge. So here's an ecosystem that needs money. And I had known that always the creative and the money don't speak the same language. And I was a creative. So maybe if I went to learn the money, I could fit that niche of this like creative who like understood the money, and I could provide value to the industry. So I went back to the first company I asked to work for their money, and I hated finance. I hated the numbers, but I got a full business degree. I had the brain to understand it. And so I spent, the first years without getting paid, and I would write down everything every single person said. I like literally lived on a mattress at my friend's house for a while, because I just like kept thinking it's about to break. We're gonna get it. Then I ended up working with Randy Jackson and his company. I ended up working with some other companies named Atlantic Screen Media Group doing consulting. I started getting paid for it. I was finally getting on my feet. I had gotten this great offer to do this job up at Westlake. I was starting to go, and I get in a car wreck. I'm driving a friend home. I'm DD one night, and I'm driving a friend home. I had to hike the next morning with this group called Metal, so I was DD that night. I'm driving him downtown, and a car hits us. He fell asleep at the wheel of the other car and flips us down the highway. No. And so they had to bring the jaws of life, and like we're upside down, flames coming out of the car. I remember when the car went to flip, I thought to myself, like, I was worried that my friend was going to die. It was actually an ex of mine. I was worried that he was going to die, but I was not worried about myself for some reason. Like, I just had this affirming moment of like, you're going to be fine. And I just held on for dear life, and they pull us out of the car, and I had a tear between my second and third vertebrae when I go into the doctor. This guy gives them insurance. He doesn't end up having insurance. No. So now my insurance, I have uninsured driver's motor insurance, but it's awful, guys. Like, your insurance goes to fight them, but your insurance essentially is not really standing up for you. Nope. So I could not get like money to cover half my medical bills. I had to pay out of pocket. How
much was your overall medical bills?
I don't even know. I don't do numbers, remember, after that first time. But it wiped me out financially. Yeah. I couldn't go to Westlake anymore because I had PTSD from driving, so I couldn't go to Westlake anymore for my job. And so I took like an office job that year, like in an office, just helping them manage stuff because I needed a job and I couldn't go to Westlake, and I did not have I was hurt. I didn't have the ability to go back to another production company and like ask for like scrounge, because it's a competitive environment, scrounge for a job. So for a half a year, I just like took a job and had to go and fight, and it financially wiped me out. And I moved into another friend's house for the second time. And I was just like, oh my God, like maybe I'm doing this wrong. I wanted to produce so badly, but now it's been years and I've made money, but I haven't like had my first big film. I haven't made real money, and I've been working for these enormous companies and like working all these great I've read half the scripts in Hollywood. I'm working on all these great projects, but I'm not building the type of career I want. And so until that point, it's really interesting because I talk about how we learn these lessons about undoing fear in tranches, right? So I'd had that first experience, but I was still undoing so much of my fear around, and we could talk for hours about the lessons I've learned about undoing fear as I was going through this process. And I had thought that I was pretty clean, but when I was sitting there and I was spending time just trying to think how I was going to get myself out of this hole, I realized that my entire career that I had been in production, or I'd been working for production companies, I'd always had a backup plan. I had always been consulting on the side, or helping with marketing on the side, or helping someone with an event on the side.
Wow.
And so I thought to myself, okay, you really wanted to do this in life, and now you're starting all over again.
For the second time.
What if you just give yourself X amount of time to really go all in? And so I'd gone to look at a house because I needed to move.
Wow.
I needed to move. And I had met a bunch of college kids, and they had just graduated from Princeton, and they were making $10K a week or $10K a month on Amazon stores. And so I'd gone in to see this house, and I was like, they showed me this room, which I had thought was its own apartment, but it was a room in the house that they wanted me to rent. And they were like, it's like $5K whatever a month. And I was like, how are you guys making so much money? And they were like, oh, we started Amazon dropship stores when we were in college. And I'm sitting here, I'm listening to this guy speak, and I'm like, there's no way that he's smarter than me.
Yeah.
You're telling me this kid is making like $10K a month? There's no way he's smarter than me. But when we talk about quantum shifting or leaping or moving into a new paradigm, you have to believe that the key to being able to shift your reality is you have to believe it's possible. And so when I went and I met these kids and they tell me this story, I'm like, holy shit, I'm doing something wrong. I went home that day and I watched every video. I wrote all my friends. I watched every video on Amazon drop shipping businesses. And by the end of the week, I knew with 100% certainty that if worst came to worst, I could move back to Ohio with $1,000 and I could be a millionaire by the end of the year. And then I could go make whatever film I wanted.
Wow.
And so with that belief and understanding, I went back and I, for the first time in those years that I've been in production, I quit everything else. And I just focused on making movies. And I had, within the first 3 months, I had landed a new job. I had closed my first big movie, and I never looked back. But I had fear.
Wow.
I had fear around making money, doing my passion. I had fear around making money, doing my passion, because we are taught, especially as I'm South Asian, as an Asian, like growing up in Asian households. And by the way, my parents are so supportive. So it's not my parents, it's a community around us, right? That you need to do something with security. You need to, so I'd already taken this like path. I had this dialogue. You can't make money off of your passion. You have to have a backup. You have to have this like real thing that you're doing. And I had given myself 3 months till the end of the year. In the first 2 months, I had reached my first big success.
Holy crap. Holy
when most
crap.
people like turn around, you literally just was like, no, I'm going to go all in.
Because like Chris, the option wasn't there.
Option wasn't there.
I had decided this is what I was going to do. And
damn, that's so inspiring. Amazing. That literally just inspired me. I'm like, whoa. Like, holy crap, your story.
Got goosebumps.
Yeah, for real.
So that's how I became a filmmaker, guys.
Nice.
Yeah.
But what are you doing for your mental health and mind-body health now?
I meditate every single day, and what that is about disconnecting again with the noise and the people. But guys, like, I'm not perfect. None of us are perfect. I'm not perfect. Yesterday, I ended up in a conversation with a friend when I was talking about a old position I'd had and the negative things that had happened. Those are all dialogues. When you talk and you you like reevaluate old stuff that is part of your story, and it is connected to an emotion still. You are calling more of that into your life. And so I started having this I still on a daily basis of the night, I'm like, okay, what did I do that I didn't feel good in my body today, and what did feel good? And the next day you start the morning with scripting or meditating or however you want to get there, of just focusing on the feelings you want to bring in your life and the goals you want to bring in your life, and aligning yourself with that, because that is what you're going to bring into your life that day. And you have to constantly review the tape like a game, right? And redo. But we have big goals, and like we just started a music company with our film company, Tushar Opt, as music producers running that company for me. Martin Garrix is doing our first soundtrack.
Wow.
Like I've written music this year that's going into our TV shows. I have like a piece I'm directing this coming year. These are big goals, and so unless we're hyper focused on what we are bringing into the world, we've started our Web3 side. We've done a deal with Lockerverse, which is backed by the Disney incubator, and we're building our community in our Web3 to be able to think outside of the paradigm, which is a lot of what we're talking about in Web3 specifically, outside of the paradigm, because I come from the paradigm of film and television, and I think a lot of people went into the Web3 space. All these things apply to what we're seeing coming through in the Web3 space and the building of technology. Here's a new space that people don't know, and everyone's coming at it like, okay, this is my world, this is my universe. I'm going to now build within those four walls. But I think the trick of understanding opportunity when new tech comes up is being able to throw away the walls and being like, okay, this is what I know. These are what my goals are. How can this tech, how can this new situation, how can this new company, how can serve those goals? And those are where we see this real progress and people really winning and understanding this Web3 space. I know you and I talked about a little bit your film work.
Yes, and also I want to know the difference between, you mentioned Web3 and film, and then also how to apply the technology in film is a bit different. Could you talk more about like the difference?
Yeah, so one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this space and speaking in this space is because I'm a traditional film and television creator. And for me, this entire journey, everything I just told you, the whole story, is about my artist self being able to create with more freedom. Why did I go learn the money? Why did I go learn the business, etc.? It's because my 5-year-old self just wanted to be able to create. And it was always about the money and the time and like all the resources. How do I take all that away? Well, my answer was I build it underneath a company, right? And that's why I built the company, so I could have that creative freedom. And that's also pertains to why I'm so into understanding new tech and new opportunities, because all these things for artists give us more creative freedom. We always lean out as artists away from the business, away from the numbers. No, that's someone else's job. But it's in leaning in to these ecosystems that we get the freedom to do our art more freely. And so I encourage artists to learn the business side. And with Web3, what happened was, again, you have this new tech, and this happens every time there's a new tech wave. Everyone kind of within their box tries to figure out how that fits into them. And so we had what is beautiful, and we saw this in Web 2 before with YouTube and with TikTok and with Instagram. We have the beautiful emergence of a new format of storytelling, right guys? So now you can make just as much money as I do as a film and television creator making a YouTube channel. We can make just as much money as I do as a film and television creating a TikTok channel. These are new ways to storytell, and I think the trap is that people are like trying to compare them. Like I need to be successful. We have not reprogrammed our brain to be successful. I need to be in a movie. No, you're storytelling every day, and you're making more money than me on your YouTube. You are a successful storyteller. We just haven't reframed the idea of what success is. And so here in Web3, you had a bunch of creators who jumped onto this idea and started creating for Web3 distribution. How beautiful. Here's another way for storytellers to put stories out and monetize on their passion. So Web3 film and television is its own thing, and it will continue to be its own thing, and it may make more money than I make in traditional film and television. But there's also an opportunity for traditional musicians, traditional film and television creators, traditional comic book writers to utilize the technology to help within the ecosystem, right? And success is not defined by either. So for a traditional film and television creator, for me and specifically in our company, we're focused on better serving our fandom. Here is a opportunity where for years, all the other companies, Instagram, TikTok, etc., all owned our first party data on where our audience was, how to retarget them, how to get back to them. Here's new tech that is owned by the people. An opportunity
owned by the people
to own my own first party data. And what is more important to me than anything as an independent producer is understanding who my fans are, being able to find them again, and being able to reserve them with content that they love. No matter what streaming service it's on, I need to know where they are. I need to be able to go back to them. Otherwise, every time I release a film or television show, which is what has happened in the last 10 years, I am restarting my marketing from ground zero.
Amazing.
So for us, I am looking to educate traditional film and television creators on how they can protect their IP and release IP within the Web3 community, and how they can build and tokenize their fandom. Because really, to survive as an independent producer in this next paradigm, you will need to know your audience and you will need to be able to find them.
Wow.
Done.
Damn. Done. Done. That holy crap.
Incredible. Wow.
That